I'm convinced that no greeting sounds normal on this at all. So I'm not going to greet. Instead, I'm just going to say that it's May 2nd. I think last night I must have had a Groundhog Month moment and was convinced that it was still April 1st. It is not April anymore, which is, I suppose, good. It means it's no longer National Poetry Month. It means that we are finished with Paradise Lost. It means that I thought maybe the pandemic would be over, but it is not. So more pandemic poetry. Um, Currently, we are on night number 2 of John Donne's 7-sonnet sequence called La Corona, which means the crown, or the wreath, and is a really like nerdy poet play on words because a corona is a sequence of poems, like I said last night, that has a pattern of repeated last lines and first lines, tying each of the sonnets together and tying the last sonnet to the first one. So it's weaving the poems together, which is kind of fascinating. But like Donne showed us in poem number 1 last night, he also has a lot of fun playing with the word itself as it connects to or opens up allusions of the crucifixion and the crown of thorns and the laurel crown that is often given to great poets or other individuals who are triumphant in some way. So often like returning generals after war who were victorious, etc., would be given crowns made out of bay laurel, which the culinarians of the world know as that delicious leathery leaf that makes things like soups and stews and braised meats and rice and what else? Dried beans and split peas, really tasty. Anyway, it's the same stuff. So Donne plays a lot with that idea in poem number 1, the intersection between the crucifixion and poetry, being a poet, which for Donne was a source of worldly temptation that he wrote about, and has this sort of like past life version of himself as a poet who likes to talk about love and sex and let's be really honest though, he likes to talk about those things in his religious poetry too. He's just complicated and felt the burden of trying to navigate his own complexity and his devotion to God throughout his life. And wordplay on Corona is fun with that, fun in that respect too. And of course, now it means something completely different to us. Yes, I'm aware of the puns or wordplay that are happening all around this particular decision. One of my friends from Knoxville, Royce, and I were on the same wavelength whenever I first proposed doing the Paradise Lost in the pandemic. And he and I thought it would be fitting to do a little Donne for National Poetry Month. And I decided to do Paradise Lost instead because, like I said before, I had this idea that feels really like poignant and short-sighted, idealistic, sweet, that we would be out of the pandemic after 30 days and I could pick one big work and work my way through it and have a way to mark the time of the pandemic itself. But that was not the case. And I think I should have known, probably knew that wasn't going to happen anyway. But now we're in May and La Corona. And I'm going to jump in, and I'll read the first poem again and jump into the second poem, which will be new. And we'll be able to see how the last line of the first poem serves as the first line of the second poem. And I guess we'll mark the corona-ness that way. Okay. Preamble over. Here come the poems. La Corona 1 is just numbered 1. Deign at my hands this crown of prayer and praise, weaved in my low devout melancholy, thou which of good hast, yea, art treasury, all changing, unchanged, ancient of days. But do not with a vile crown of frail bays reward my muse's white sincerity, but what thy thorny crown gained, that give me, a crown of glory, which doth flower always. The ends crown our works, but thou crownest our ends, for at our end begins our endless rest. This first, last end, now zealously possessed, with a strong, sober thirst, my soul attends. Here's your turn. 'Tis time that heart and voice be lifted high. Salvation to all that will is nigh. Of course, he's also being very, very pointing to the constructedness of his poem and the poem, the like sonnet sequence and the corona with all this talk of ends. The ends crown our works, but thou crownest our ends. So the ends of our poems are the beginnings of the next poem. So the ends of each of the works crown the work that follows. Each work crowns the work that follows. He's so witty. Anyway. Thou crownest our ends. Anyway, only possible through praise and deep consideration of God and the sacrifice of the Son. And that's what we're supposed to be paying attention to, even though Donne continues to draw our attention to his wordplay and his wittiness. Anyway. 'Tis time that heart and voice be lifted high. Salvation to all that will is nigh. La Corona, number 2, Annunciation. Salvation to all that will is nigh. That all, which always is all everywhere, which cannot sin, and yet all sins must bear, which cannot die, yet cannot choose but die. Lo, faithful virgin, yields himself to lie in prison in thy womb. And though he there can take no sin, nor thou give, yet he'll wear, taken from thence, flesh, which death's force may try. Ere by the spheres time was created, thou wast in his mind, who is thy son and brother, whom thou conceived. Yea, thou art now thy maker's maker, and thy father's mother. Thou hast light and dark, and shut'st in little room, immensity cloistered in thy dear womb. There's a lot there too. I'm not going to unpack it. A word that I really don't like. Anyway, I'll attend to that tomorrow. For now, that was La Corona, number 1, and number 2, Annunciation. More on May 3rd. Bye.